I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Osceola Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Well, that was a countdown by somebody that's
Who
obviously
is that?
very tired.
We hadn't heard him in a long
exhausted
time.
there. Wasn't no excitement.
Rolling
to that
back
at all.
in from the Turkey Road. It is
Mr. Rob Kenny.
Mr. Rob Kenny.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Photographer extraordinaire.
We'd like to tell you we appreciate you coming to work today, Rob.
Well,
You know,
As
what
late
time did you wake up
as
this
you
morning,
were. Yeah,
Rob?
what time did you wake up this morning?
I woke up at 8:15 this
my
morning.
goodness.
What time was our office
Well, you got
hours?
some catch-up sleep.
8 o'clock.
Hey, I saw that.
You can tell it's turkey season.
I saw that it was going to be windy, and I took a little something extra to make sure I got it. And that was a power sleep. That's the best night's sleep I've
I
had.
slept really good last night.
When it's bad weather in the mid to late spring, it's some of the best night's sleep you'll ever have.
Did you still wake up at 4:30ish?
Pretty close, but for me, I went to bed about 8:45, 8:30, and I slept solid to like 4:30, and that is unheard of for me not to wake up during the night at least once. So anyway, I'm like a spring chicken today.
I woke up and my bat phone had text, but I was
Oh, I
already
did.
asleep.
I
missed an opportunity to go
So
hunting.
one of my
Nah.
I sent Laney a text last night before I went to bed. Rematch? ?
Yeah.
And he didn't answer, so I got up and saw that and kind of rolled over and went back to sleep.
Oh, babe. Lanny,
I
disappointing.
texted
No,
back at 6.
Yeah, but
Sure. Well, all right. So, look, welcome to West Point, Mississippi, home of Mossy Oak and the Gamekeeper studio. And inside the studio
In the
today,
house today.
we've got a guy,
turkey royalty is
Sumter
in the
County's
house.
own. Yeah.
Dr. Marcus Lashley.
Hey.
And I'm so thankful, Marcus, that you didn't wear a Florida shirt or a hat because I'm having a tough time with it of late.
Yeah,
He got
Well,
on that
he-
bottom land, baby.
I
That
thought it-
wildlife investment
He's
shirt.
got multiple. That's his employer, but he's got multiple loves and pulls for a lot of different teams. He's versatile.
I did feel like it was a little bit too soon, so I decided against the Florida blue.
So did you have Florida in your bracket?
I did.
Did you
all
have
the
them
way.
going all
Did you
the
go
way?
all the way?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately.
Well, you're Will Goolsby. You guys are close friends. Did this recent game disrupt that friendship at all?
No, I think we're past that. You know, we talk turkeys when the games are going on, so we were just fine. But
Where did Will
I
go
did
to
So,
school?
yeah, but Bobby's trying
Well,
to
he's
send you a message here.
Auburn.
It's kind of
Oh, I got you.
subconsciously that he's not past it yet.
Yeah. he's
Well,
bad to dwell on it.
I just let it lay.
I'm getting there, though, I guess. It's just, man.
I
Well-
did meet a young lady this past weekend that was an Auburn fan at the Westervelt Lodge, and she did not seem to be past it. She heard where I was from. She
Had a
no
little chip
longer-
on her shoulder.
She didn't like me anymore.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Well, so today we're going to talk about a serious subject. We've had you in here a bunch of times, and you're doing some ongoing research. We've been sending some money down there to you through Gamekeeper grants.
Yeah.
Do some more right now. I just saw an email approving some more today.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we want to learn what all's been going on down there. We've seen, we hear great things. We hear like breakthrough, exciting things that you got going on. So we want to hear about all that. But you have to give us just 1 minute here. We kind of go. We do it. You hadn't been here in a while. We're trying to
step the game up.
We're trying to. So we always let Laney.
Laney? You try to remember.
He'll have a current event, something going on in the world, Marcus, that everybody might have an opinion about, and so
Or maybe not.
it's always interesting to
Maybe
see
not.
what
That's
he comes
right.
up with.
That's right.
What you got, Laney?
Well, kind of interesting. We've talked about this in the office. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast. But recently, there's an article in Outdoor Life about it, that there was a lawsuit filed by 2 Pennsylvania hunting clubs that reached the state Supreme Court. And it was all about the open field doctrine and game wardens basically having this long-standing legal principle that permits them to monitor and survey private lands. So I think something has happened like this in Tennessee recently, and so there's a lot of conversation going on about it. So it's just interesting to see, kind of what happens and, what precedents are set from this.
So can a game warden, Marcus? I'm kind of looking at you.
I'm not a game warden.
Can they put if they suspect something's going on, can they put up a camera on private land and monitor you?
That's state specific, isn't it?
I guess it is.
You have to ask
He's
someone-
probably
someone
trying to
who may
avoid
know.
that. Just like
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of,
I mean,
think, gray area and
I
interpretation.
don't know.
too.
That's a good. That would be a law enforcement question. I do know they've told me, and I've heard that from officers in Mississippi and Alabama both. If you get a trail cam picture, you of the landowner or club, and it's very clearly recognizable, and other people can recognize it, that it'll hold up in court. So if you happen to catch a poacher or trespasser on camera, especially video is good too, and you got a good facial view of them, or you can
Yeah, that's
positively
evidence.
identify them. Other people can do that, and that has been done to prosecute people. So
Well, that'd be a good reason. Like my Spartan cameras, I try to work to make sure I get the time code and date right.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
kind of
Admissible in
changes
court.
if you're not careful.
yeah, and I tell you what, they have you can get the video from it too.
But we're talking about somebody coming onto your land that you own
That's right.
and putting a camera up to surveil
Yeah.
possible
Yeah.
bad stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like it. If it was like in a building or something, it would need a search warrant, court order type thing. So maybe they do need to have some. I'm
Yeah,
staying out of that one. Whatever they decide, I'll adhere to it. I don't care.
I think
I'm
what's-
fine with it. But
What would you, Marcus, if you got a little place down there in Florida and you're hunting, all of a sudden you see a trail cam, what would you immediately think it's the game warden, or would you think
Oh
somebody's?
no, I'd be upset about it. In fact, I have been upset about it before.
I would take it down.
I would take it down.
Yeah,
in a
I
heartbeat.
would as well.
Yeah. No,
But,
there's no sign on it that says, "Hey, I'm a game warden. Don't mess with my camera." So
Yeah, I'd take it down.
yeah, take it down.
The interesting thing about this is there has been some precedent set in other states. How will Pennsylvania, respond to what's happening in Tennessee? Right. And then there's a federal, this is cameras. There's also been discussions about drones, wardens flying, drones over private property and using that as evidence. So,
Well, I wonder how much of it depends on probable cause
Yeah,
versus
Right.
exploratory.
yeah.
Yep.
So if
There's
they have
so many.
a
Yeah.
tip.
It's an interesting.
It is
It's a
interesting
rabbit
down there.
hole. We probably
It is.
I see
it's
pros
a tough
and
one.
I see pros and cons on both sides.
I do too.
Especially with probable cause. But I would like to think that they would have to prove that they had cause.
Yeah.
Right.
I would too.
But
Yeah.
Well, and the warden, the name warden, they've never. I mean, there are law enforcement officers, but warden kind of connotates, using your own judgment. And I think back in the day, that's why kind of the game laws were maybe not written a little bit loosely and not so defined for that warden to be able to interpret, what was right and what was
Right.
wrong.
But then
But-
all wardens aren't created equal.
that's right,
either,
and
so
all wardens aren't created equal. So who abuses it and
Yeah.
who doesn't?
some are true servants
Yep.
of what we love, and some aren't. It just is what it is. A
Yeah.
human being.
Yep, that's right. So be interesting to see how that one kind of works out.
That is true. All right, Marcus, let's turn around. Let's look at you. Let's,
Now we're talking
Don't
turkeys.
do it long.
so this past year, the 12 months, and Dudley's raising his hand. You want to do your rapid fires right
if you want me to do rapid fire, I was just letting you know so
Yeah,
you don't get to the very end and then
now?
ask
I'm
about
glad
it.
you did that, Dudley. Why don't we do rapid fire right now, Marcus?
All
Go
right.
ahead, Dudley.
So don't look at me.
Okay. So this is brought to you by Nutrient Ag.
Our buddies.
We're
that's
big
right.
fans of those guys. They help us out a lot.
Yeah, especially got to be spraying here pretty soon. So
Oh, yeah. And so I think we've done this before, Marcus. We're just asking some questions in rapid fire, trying to get to know you better. Some will
Okay.
be true, false. Some will be yes, no. Some may be it depends.
Or any of them ones I should lie about, or
Maybe.
if you need to,
That's
Maybe.
your choice, or you can just say pass if you don't
Yeah, you
feel
can say
comfortable.
Okay. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
That was easy. I got the first
I
one.
got the first one right.
Longbeard Light, year 1, 2, or 3? Which did you prefer?
I really liked number 2.
Okay. Boom.
Pass
There
that
you
along.
go. All right. Sausage, egg, and cheese or bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit?
Bacon, egg, and cheese.
Would you rather hunt a really windy day or an off and on rainy day?
Rainy.
What's better, okra mixed in with your purple whole peas or chow chow on the top or both?
Oh my.
Ooh, I'd do both.
Yeah.
Like it.
True
Do you
story.
like mayonnaise on your homegrown tomatoes, yes or no?
Yes.
If the numbers can sustain it, would you rather kill 2 turkeys on your home ground or 1 at home and 1 in another state?
1 and 1.
All right, here's a good scenario. You peep around a corner on a logging road and a legal turkey is at 40 yards looking the other way. Do you quickly attempt to fill your tag or do you cower down and wait for a chance to call at him?
Call at him.
All right. Pick a shot distance you're more comfortable with, 12 yards or 38 yards.
38.
All day.
Spicy boiled peanuts or regular boiled peanuts?
Spicy.
Hey.
All right, last but not least, what is more important? The number of feathers in a tail fan or the number of insects in their crop?
Number of insects in the crop.
Hey. Great answer.
Yeah,
Very, very good.
Hey, the Cajun boiled peanuts are good now.
they are.
They're delicious.
They certainly are.
Peanut patch.
Well, Marcus, we always learn a little, we always enjoy getting to learn a little bit more about you. You're a homeboy. You're from Livingston, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You probably grew up hunting around there. Toxie,
Looking over Toxie's fence.
You make Toxie nervous every time you talk about it.
No, not really. He lives in South Florida. Whatever, 12 hours away, 10 hours away.
Yeah.
I live an hour away, so.
Yeah.
I'm not
Marcus
much
is now
danger
worried
anyway.
about Toxie. Yeah.
Well, Marcus, we're still waiting on Lanny and I are still waiting on that invitation to come down there and show you around. So
Oh, I'm working on it, guys.
You heard his comment about, would you rather kill 2 on your place or split it
I
up?
caught that one.
Yep.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I'm
As
with
I
you.
was saying, is don't ever kill one on your place if you can go kill it on a lease.
That's
on,
exactly
you know,
right.
somebody else.
Yeah.
yeah.
Save them.
We like our turkeys on our
Our
place.
place.
That's
Yep.
right.
So Marcus, why don't you start off kind of bringing us up to speed on the research that you've been doing in the last year since you were here?
Can't wait to hear.
Lots.
Yeah, well, I know you guys asked me to kind of put together a list, and I'm really excited about all of the things I've been able to get going because it's been a pretty wild ride and also pretty extensive, and I think it's going to be great stuff for the wild turkey. Yeah, so in the past year, along with Gamekeeper grants and NWTF and TFT and the state agency, and I also was able to secure an appropriation from the state to fund a multifaceted long-term turkey research project. And the list of things that I provided you guys are some of the things that we have going on in that study, and I'm really excited because some of them we're getting to address things that you don't usually get to address, but we know are problems. So, for example, I'll start with one of the ones I'm most excited about. We have a Poult imprinting project where we have established a captive population of turkeys, and we are manipulating fields within the areas that they have access to so that we can basically rear poults in different types of fields to see how do we maximize poult rearing success. And that's directly translatable to something that any landowner could accomplish on their property. And we know, based on literature and several ongoing studies, including our work in Florida, that poult rearing success has been particularly poor. I also, you guys know, I'm a habitat specialist by trade. And when I go around the South, that usually is the factor. Poult rearing cover is usually the limiting factor on properties wherever I go. So I'm really excited about that because I think the application and potential for, improving things for wild turkeys is really great. And we get to, hang out with turkeys, just like Illumination of the Flatwoods. It's really an amazing thing.
Help us envision what this looks like. How big of an area are we talking about, and how do y'all keep predators out?
So they are in a facility. We teamed up with the USDA, and they had established flight pens that they have done avian research in for a couple of decades, I guess now. And they were available, and when I got funding, I came to them and asked them if we could essentially rent the space for a long term, and they agreed to do it. And the flight pens are several acres each, and you can basically open the gates and bring a tractor in, but it's completely encapsulated flight pen. And, you know, they're maybe 30, 40 foot ceilings on it. You know, it's all netting, and it's a really pretty incredible setup.
So, yeah.
But they had, in the past, they were doing crop depredation work in those facilities, so they set it up so that you could go in and do agriculture essentially in the flight pens themselves. So what we have done is set up experimentally different types of fields with different levels of forb diversity that we're managing in different ways, you know, disking or herbicides or, you know, what have you, things that the average landowner could accomplish on their property. And, you know, we're imprinting chicks, the Poults, as soon as they hatch to researchers, so they essentially become mama to the the turkeys. And the idea is we would keep them long term, and we have some work in mind to continue even into adulthood with these turkeys, which I'm not aware of any other work that's ever been done on this species like that, where we continue that long and look at generations of effects of habitat quality.
Yeah, you hear a lot about deer pens, but
Yeah.
you don't hear about the turkey pens.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by these things. So several acres, 40 feet tall netting.
Mm-hmm.
So they have poles.
Yeah, it's
and
like
they're
this huge
suspended?
coliseum. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
how many is several acres?
I think they're 2 or 3 acres each.
Okay.
Mhm. Wow. Cool.
So collectively, we have several acres.
That's an interesting. That's
I bet
thinking
that
out of
thing's
the
a
box.
booger bear to maintain.
I can see
too.
Bobby's wheels turning. He was
Yeah.
figuring out how to do this at the dummy line.
Yeah.
Well, we had to get a whole bunch of permitting and
I bet.
things done
Yeah.
to
So
do
they weren't
this.
currently in use. They
Mm-mm.
stopped the studies. Well, that's a heck of a resource to be able to use down there. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
and we have a real problem trying to understand poult ecology in the wild. They're just tiny. Think about that chicken, chicken-sized egg.
Yep.
The little poult's curled up in there. When it hatches, for the first week of life, I mean, it's just tiny and it's super vulnerable to everything.
Yeah.
There's no way we would be able to get a transmitter on it and then follow it all the way into adulthood. Like it's just, we have some transmitters that some researchers have made work during that life stage, but we're talking about a 2-week period that you might get out of it. So this is really the way that we have to go about trying to answer questions like this. And it's pretty interesting because we can track daily weight gain, feather growth,
Wow.
all sorts of things that you could never do in the
That's
wild.
incredible.
Yeah, it is.
And we are raising them essentially like they are in the wild. They're in early succession, just like what mama would put them in if it's available. And, it's, to me, that is a critical need to understand, what's going on with turkey populations because poult rearing success is extraordinarily poor across the range, across studies.
Yeah, that's one definite thing we've learned.
Will y'all have to bring insects in and place them out, or is they're naturally there?
Yeah, so apparently the netting is not a problem for that. And when our plot started germinating, bugs just showed up, and when you walk around through some of those things, there's bugs in it.
It'd be interesting to. They wanted us to supply them stuff, Bobby, but try different, plots or forage and just see
Yeah.
what might be
Best brood.
did the best. Because they're gonna go to where the best bugs are. What maybe?
Sure.
Because I don't know if anybody's done that. It could control it like that side by side to tell. It might be really
Yeah, that-
interesting if there were, if it was distinct preference for, whatever this clover versus that clover versus,
Well, that's one of the things that I want to be the next step. The first step was just we're trying to understand structure and composition, and they're all native plants. But I think the next step is to establish selection like you're talking about. What do they prefer to get in? And the sky's the limit. It's really about trying to keep this funded long term. Is really the hard part.
So how would you keep you're going to have probably an inordinate population per that small area. How do you keep the way they eat and forage or whatever a natural situation without having to supplement it? Or are you going to have just no way around having to supplement them?
Well, when they're really tiny, essentially we need about a 1 foot barrier around each plot.
Right.
And we can, and the other thing is they're imprinted.
Right.
So our lead researcher, Kelly, that is working on that, sent me a clip recently of the first brood that she imprinted.
Right.
And she basically she has a little call that she makes to the Poults, and as soon as she does it, everybody runs. It's time to get there.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible.
That's awesome.
Is it a kiki sounding call or just something she made up?
She just made something up.
Oh.
Now, I was telling Rob earlier, I went into the facility a few days ago, and it was the first time that I had been there when we had already moved them into their outside location, and we had just arrived for the morning. I was with a different researcher talking about the different habitat treatments and looking at things, and the Poults could hear us, but we weren't mama, so we didn't hear them. But then she showed up, and as soon as she started talking, like literally the word came out of her mouth, everybody started peeping. It was a kiki.
That's so cool.
They immediately
She's got to
knew
be
Mama's
eating
here.
that up.
Oh yeah,
I bet.
just absolutely loves it.
That's amazing how they imprint.
It
Like
Oh,
that.
yeah,
is.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really fun.
Wow.
And
That's also the reason why we were never able to successfully,
Yeah.
People would hatch, get eggs, take them somewhere, hatch them, and they would never survive because they were imprinting on like humans, and they didn't have their mom there to teach them, and so they died.
Wouldn't make
They
it.
couldn't
Yeah.
survive.
Wouldn't make it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but we tried all kinds of things during the restoration process, trying to raise turkeys to release them, and it just,
Nope.
just didn't work.
Never worked.
Without mom, I know they tried it here. Mr. Clark Young had built a little,
It's a pin.
like a pin thing. Of course, with maybe it was 8 foot where they could fly, but it was long and whatever. But they hatched them out, but then I think they tried to. They didn't have mom. They had just gotten some eggs, and without mom, it just doesn't work. No matter what you do. And I think
right.
Yeah, she's
they hadn't seen anything, but occasionally a human. Maybe they threw some feed in there for them. I don't know what they did to try to keep them alive, but evidently. They finally flew. Something got in the pen and killed some of them, but they all died as soon as they flew out of there.
Wow.
And I guess that was tried all over the country.
yeah
And
we've
it never worked.
since I guess all the way back into the 50s or maybe even earlier.
Yeah, I was
than that.
reading something about it in that Alabama turkey restoration book that we got from Mr. Pringle.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's the first stuff I've ever seen written about it. But
Yeah,
So,
that's really interesting.
I heard you say y'all got all these permits and everything. So, were you using eggs collected in the wild, or were you using like Eastern turkey eggs that you got from a source?
No, we actually tried to go that route and we couldn't find any. So there are wild genetics, and essentially the way that it's worked out is, we have some hens that we're tracking, and also we have land managers that are on these places. And when a nest fails, the hen either gets killed, one of them got mowed over, unfortunately. They abandon them for various reasons, and we've been able to basically save those eggs from.
Oh, cool.
do you combine clutches or is it all? If you get
We're keeping them separate because we have some interest in understanding how the lineage, specific parentage is affecting poult performance.
that's cool.
Yeah, there's so many things that you can do with this.
Yeah, that's
I
what
mean,
we're trying to layer on as much as we can get out of it.
Yeah.
What was the is it called pipping? The process where they come out of the egg. Did you get to watch that or watch on video? Perhaps?
All of the researchers that are basically living at the site for the next several weeks, they're getting to watch it on pretty much all of them. And we have video cameras on them trying to, monitor everything. And I have seen one when it had just pipped and then it broke out of the egg, and it was pretty remarkable to watch that.
What's the time frame from when that starts till all of them are out?
It's usually based on the literature within a 36-hour window. Ours, I think, the first nest that we did it was right in that area. It was about 38 hours total. And I didn't realize that there would be so much variation. For example, we had some that pipped, and essentially they're unzipping the egg for those. And we can probably add a picture to this if you guys put it on YouTube. But they have an egg tooth, which to most people probably would mean that it's inside their beak. But it's not. It's sitting on. It's like their nose tip. They look like a little dinosaur, and they basically use that to unzip the egg all the way around the egg. And once they do that, they can then, use their leverage to push the cap open, and it's on the big end of the egg. And we had some that unzipped the egg, and they were out and ready to go in an hour. And we had some that unzipped the egg, and it took them 30 hours to get out of the egg.
Wow.
And Mama's right there with them in the wild that whole time. That's got to be a worrisome 30 some odd hours.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, the ones that hatch the quickest, they already have a day head start on everybody else. And she'll often feed them insects, or, they'll catch little bugs and things around the nest sometimes. But they've got quite the head start on the ones. So supposed, the more synchronized it can be, the better for the nest, because you want the poults to be the same in the same stage of development.
I would have thought it was a lot faster than 30 hours.
That's coming up more and more. Dr. Shamlin talked about it too, and you use that word a lot, synchronized. And like the more that the hatch is synchronized in general, instead of from late April all the way up until 1st of July or something spread out, and it makes sense. It's like if there's so many poults on the ground all at one time, a higher percentage will probably survive than if they're scattered out all the time, predators just wearing them out. And I'm thinking the same thing if they actually hatch in that clutch, close to the same time synchronized, there's probably a higher chance of surviving, because if they kind of spill out over hours at a time, then predators are probably more subject. And I was thinking too, probably the ones that take 30 hours have expended so much energy, they're probably a lot more susceptible to, getting caught or sickness and all kind of stuff.
We'll have much better data on this, once we go through multiple iterations of it. But it does seem like the smaller eggs with the smaller poults are the ones that take longer. They're just not as fit.
And those could have different fathers too, can't they?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
almost certainly do in many cases. So, but what Toxie was saying, I think that's something that has really started to resonate with me after getting involved in this process, because I've never done I've had chickens my whole life, but I've never done anything like this with turkeys. And if I've seen data and heard Chamberlain talk about that synchrony across individuals within a population, but this is showing even within the single nest.
Makes tons of sense,
right? And later on, when the poults have reached flight, often hens will come together, and the poults will be different sizes. The males and female poults, even in the same clutch, might be, and those older poults are at a huge advantage. So if you back that all the way up to hatch date, even a day can be substantial. I mean, the rate of poult growth, they're essentially doubling or more in size per week. So they're growing so rapidly, you can imagine a day or two could be a real big difference in how fit. And then it tends, at least so far, it tends to be the bigger poults that hatch first anyway. So they're already ahead.
Wow. That leans into nutritional, and health of that hen going into the nesting 100%. Season, which is always talked about. So,
Yeah, very important.
Yes.
It's so interesting how, and this is kind of random, but turkeys and birds, they hatch right at the time when there's the most insects around.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Yeah.
I heard this weekend, I heard a guy talking about, I don't see grasshoppers like I used to when I was a kid. It made me think, and I don't think I do either now that I think about that.
I know I don't.
Or fireflies,
Now,
But,
you know,
That's what the data shows, guys. I mean, there are a lot of entomologists that are tracking bug populations over decades, and that's a pretty consistent finding that the bug diversity and biomass has declined.
What would cause grasshoppers specifically to
Talking to the wrong person.
I bet you.
I know.
I'm sure pesticides is something
Yeah.
in some way.
And ticks are on the rise.
Well, another thing, if you look at the wildlife species that are not doing well, most of them are disturbance dependent and or associated with early succession, which is the same thing that we're seeing bottleneck on turkey populations. Essentially, insectivorous birds or birds that are associated with early succession are essentially ubiquitously declining.
Wow.
That's alarming.
Golly. It's all
Gotta
about
gr-
the bugs.
Yeah.
Gotta
man.
grow more bugs.
You got to grow more bugs.
But Marcus, does that lead to another, or can I jump down here to something that just really I'm
Sure.
want to
Are
ask
you
you
jumping? Are you
Whatever.
jumping
You
down
jump
already?
wherever you
Are
want to.
Already on number 9.
Was that a play on the fact we were just talking about grasshoppers?
Oh,
You're gonna jump around that?
There's a dad joke coming somewhere.
about the cow turkey interactions with GPS.
Yeah.
I really want to hear about that.
Okay. Yeah, so there's another researcher that I work with closely, Hans Ellington, and he focuses most of his work on mesocarnivores, so coyotes in particular. He's done a lot of work with them, and I have an interest in that because coyotes eat turkeys. I think everybody knew that.
Oh,
but,
I know for a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have quite a few hens that we had transmitted, and we suspect coyote was the cause of mortality during nesting, particularly when the hen is on the nest and incubating. She's staying on it through the night, and that is when she seems to be really, really vulnerable.
That's something I've noticed very recently on all my Spartans is I was getting pictures of 2 or 3 hens a day just in random little openings and walking around roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gotten a single picture of a hen in several days. So that leads me to believe that most of them may actually be sitting.
Yeah. Well, it ought to be coming. If they're not doing it already, it should be happening really soon.
Time to launch the dog proofs everywhere you can put one out.
So Hans and I came together, and we've been able to put together funding, and we have coyotes tagged with GPS on 2 of the sites where we have hens and gobblers tagged. So the transmitters on their back, we're getting 30-minute interval relocations of everybody, and we can see them interacting. And that's what we're working on right now, but unfortunately, I don't have any results to show you yet. But we do have several tagged hens that we think were eaten by a coyote, and there's potential that it was a tagged coyote. So that's the main thrust of that project, is to try to understand how turkeys and coyotes are using the landscape and what is making hens vulnerable to coyotes in particular. But I mean, you guys are all avid hunters, and I know that when I say this, you're probably going to have several instances where it happened to you, but I've had quite a few instances where I was sitting there either yelping or I had a turkey gobbling, and all of a sudden a coyote shows up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I've seen videos of coyotes stalking decoys. I hear people send videos. You know, you got the examples of, folks seeing a pile of feathers next to the coyote they caught. We look at the diet studies. They're commonly turkeys in coyote diet. You know, they definitely are eating some turkeys, and understanding that dynamic, and, whether or not there's some sort of habitat component that's making turkeys vulnerable, or if trapping can aid in, your management program. I think those are important questions that we're trying to get at with it. Another aspect that I'll add real quick, but don't ask me to go into detail because this isn't my strength. We also have samples from everybody, so we have genetic profiles of everybody. And there's potential that we could even link genetically who was the one that got a particular turkey, and have known interactions that cause death.
Seems like it's more common today. I saw Greg Briggs yesterday as I was leaving, coming back from there, and you probably know Greg too. And I think it was yesterday morning, but he literally he turned his head and a coyote, he had just been calling, and a coyote was coming straight at him, and he didn't even have his gun. It was like beside him. He didn't have time to get his gun up to try to swing on him, whatever. And he just like threw his hands up and hollered. And he said literally from me, he was talking to me, from me to Lanny, before the coyote realized it. And I think like blew leaves over him, trying to get away, and was gone before he could get his gun up on him. But he said, I mean, literally when he realized Greg wasn't a turkey, he was maybe 4 feet from him, coming hard.
Well, not many people are hunting coyotes anymore,
No, I don't know that we ever have really hard.
Well, and
I
I
mean,
guess
maybe-
Especially in the South, where
Because
there's
I
so
don't-
many trees everywhere.
And I mean, it never was a big fur market. I don't think.
No.
Well,
The raccoon deal was.
Yeah,
but,
the coyotes actually weren't here very
Right,
long.
that's
right.
They expanded. I mean, in the 70s and 80s
when they
were the
showed
first
up.
times they showed up in some of the states in the Southeast. I think in North Carolina, on where I did my PhD work with deer and coyotes and turkeys, their first observation of a coyote on that site was 1990.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it wasn't that long ago,
Aren't y'all doing acoustic monitoring at some of those locations where you've got the coyotes and the turkeys both tagged on the same places as well?
Yes. In fact, we have acoustic monitors, the gobble boxes or sound box.
I got.
I hear people saying calling them different things. I call them a sound box, but we have the grids of those on 25 or so areas from the southern tip of the Osceola Range all the way to the tip of the Panhandle in the Eastern Range. And a couple of those sites we have turkeys tagged, and 2 of the sites we have both tagged. And you reminded me of another aspect that's really interesting, which I think we probably talked about when you were down there, Rob, but there's some interesting things that can be done to integrate those technologies as well. Like we can identify specific gobbles that happen in a specific location, and then we have the coyote's movement, so we could actually see, is calling from the gobbler influencing the hunting behavior of the coyote at the same time in the same place. And we could also reverse that. We have camera grids across these areas as well, and we can see an individual coyote, or we have the collar. It's a little more a little less fine scale, I guess, for a specific location, right? But we still have those 30-minute locations. We know about where a coyote is based on that, and then we know exactly where a coyote is based on it being detected on a camera. And then we could connect that to gobbling around that area to see how it's influencing gobbling. Because, I mean, I've had multiple birds that I've heard gobbling, and all of a sudden they shut up, and then the coyote shows up.
Mm-hmm.
So
I actually had that happen a week ago Monday, and
yeah,
I was birds were across some high backwater, wouldn't play, weren't coming, so I could hear one. I had one that was on me I could get to, and I moved, and he was answering every note, and it's like, this is going to be awesome. And he just shut up. I mean, and he wasn't maybe 150 yards in closing. He just shut up. And I would get picked off by hens. In about 5 minutes, coyotes came loping in, 2 different ones, and making a big circle. So I'm sure that's what happened. But it shut him up. I mean, it shut him slam up.
yeah.
Boy, wow. I'm just always, when I saw that on your list, my mind went there first, because that's in my mind. And we talked to some smart people here sitting, and there's a lot of varied opinions, but in my mind's eye, that bird is so vulnerable when he's blown up strutting.
Yeah, and
he
he's
might be
announcing
gobbling.
his location all the time.
Yeah, you would just think that they're so.
And I'm sure it happens. It's funny that maybe, what I say, 3 or 4 that the trapper, he's all of the ones he could tell for sure were jakes. not a hen, certainly not a mature gobbler. It'd be pretty hard for one to. He could do it, but I tell you what, if he grabbed a hold of one, with spurs and all, he'd take a beating to try to hang on to him. They probably don't do that much, I wouldn't think.
Well, so I'm trying to think out of maybe I can't remember how many gobblers we have tagged, but I think we've had 3 during the breeding season. We don't know what the turkey was doing, but it was during the day. 3 that have gotten caught by a predator.
Wow.
And,
but you don't know what kind of predator for sure.
Yeah, we're not sure if it, but the field evidence would indicate coyote in those cases.
Wow. So, Marcus, we're seeing some photographs of you banding birds. Could you walk us through the process of identifying a site and the whole process of capturing some birds and banding them? Could you walk us through that?
Yeah. So, it's very similar in terms of finding locations to what you might expect as a hunter. We're out on these sites looking for sign of turkeys. Where are we seeing tracks and maybe seeing birds even when we're driving around, and that's really similar to what most folks would associate with scouting for turkeys. It's we're doing it in the winter. That's a little different than most folks are doing, but otherwise it's very similar. Where it starts to deviate some is we have to pick places that we have enough room for our net. And, for those that aren't familiar, the method of choice that has kind of taken over turkey captures in most places outside of in Rio Range or Miriam, most projects are using rocket netting. And that sounds probably more dangerous than it is. We do this really safely, and we have permits and everything, and training and everything to go through. But essentially, this net, we have to go in and lay it out. We're attaching these rockets to this net, and we have to have enough room to shoot the net over the turkeys safely. It essentially needs to be, the vegetation needs to be similar to a mowed lawn. You can't have tall vegetation. You can't have sticks. I mean, how many of y'all have thrown a cast net into a bush or something in the water?
It's not fun.
No, you do not want to be trying to pick out sticks while you got a bunch of turkeys flopping around under there and you're trying to get them out into a box real fast. So, that's really important. Sometimes we'll have technicians go out there and mow the area or something if we find a good spot, but we need to take care of it. Yeah, so that's where it starts to deviate, and then usually we will start with some chopped corn in the area, and we'll kind of have stringers out to draw them in, and we need to get them all into a specific location, and that we have a specific distance out from the net so that the turkeys are safe when we because we're firing a net over the turkeys. And then we need everybody to essentially be facing the net with their head down. And most people think, oh man, you should just go catch those turkeys or this, and that's easy. But why don't you get 10 turkeys to come stand right together in the same direction with their head down?
I've never seen a lot of turkeys with their head in the same place.
It actually is quite difficult, and it's a lot of fun. But we are putting often daylight till dark sits over and over all the way through the winter, trying to get on birds that we've consistently patterned on these locations, and then to have 14 gobblers show up and we can't get everybody to stand there so that we can, with their head down. Yeah. So it's really challenging to make that work, but the setup, you have that net. We have a blind that's nearby. We have to run a wire to that blind. And, we'll have 2 people sit in the blind just like you were sitting on a field on some decoys or something. Very similar setup to that, but all of that has to be done in a really particular manner so that the people are safe and the animals are safe and we can capture them and get on them really quick. Something that I didn't expect about that is, even on site, we have multiple sites where the turkeys are not hunted, they literally will see the people, and they don't run away or anything. They're just they don't care, right? Trucks are driving by and things like that. But if they see 6 inches of a wire, they're out. We're done.
Wow.
If they see a little tuft of the net, they can't stand it. They will not come in. And I thought that was so remarkable. Even when, when I'd done this on multiple sites, but I'd always done it on hunted sites. But then we got on a non-hunted site where I was like, oh, these are dumb birds, right? They're naive. This isn't going to be that important there. But we have, and I think you guys even, when you came down and filmed some of this, have film of a group of gobblers running in, and they saw the wire, like a little piece of the wire, and it looked like a brick wall. They came running in, and everybody just put on the brakes, and nobody came in front of the net. And it was amazing. Just because of that. So we spend an enormous amount of time camouflaging everything. The net, it has to be perfect so that you can't tell it's there, right? It's just like grass and different debris and things that we're putting on it. We can't use any sticks, but essentially we're trying to make sure that there are no straight lines. And I guess it makes sense to turkeys. A straight line is a snake. And, if they see a straight line, they will not come there. And, that often that wire might be extending 20 or 30 or 40 yards. So we're literally on our hands and knees burying it in the soil all the way to the line.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. And, another thing to think about is, we got this group of turkeys on this site and they didn't show up, but then they showed up on this other site. Well, you can't just move the net. That's a all-day affair for several people, right? So we have to be really sure that they're going to show up in this particular spot. And, we often are putting long hours in, because they're turkeys, right? They don't always show up. And often we'll have them showing up on a site every day, but they might show up at 8 a.m. one day, 4 p.m. the next day. They're varying in the time of day. So we're often putting in all-day sits.
Are y'all using cell cameras to help you at all with any of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
we do have cell cameras, and we're using that. Let's see, last year we started using cell cameras, and that completely changed everything because we could monitor when turkeys were present without having to go to the site, obviously, and that really changed things for us because not only is there not the expenses, because we might be monitoring 150 sites, all distributed all over Florida, so we don't have that expense and the time investment from the students involved, but we also don't have to disturb the site. And that helped us really get turkeys consistent. And this year, we were really efficient with our captures because of that.
Talk about holding the bird, getting him out of the net, getting him in that box, the care that you've got to take for one. And then when those look like you're doing blood work on them after you get them out, go through that with us.
Yeah, so essentially when the net fires, not only, sort of like when you shoot a turkey, right? Somebody jumps up and runs out there and get it often. I don't know if y'all do that.
I do, but I get in trouble for it now.
It
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and you shoot a turkey, you run out there and get that turkey right then.
That was pre-tungsten. You know, I mean,
yeah.
'cause in our defense, I mean,
You ran out
they
there.
would run off. You had to get on
Stepped
them.
on his head.
Yeah.
I've run down a few
Stepped
of
on
them.
his
I
neck.
have too. Had a little hand-to-hand every now and then.
Lanny had never killed one with one shot.
Oh, whatever,
It's
Bobby.
always a knife fight.
Whatever, Bobby.
I thought I heard a story recently where there was some shenanigans.
There's
about
several. Yeah, there's lots of them. There's usually one or two a year. No.
Lanny chokes them out when it's all said and done.
When you run out of bullets, you don't have a choice but to choke them out.
You gotta do something. When I still instinctually do that, I took
I do too. I think they're gonna get away. Even
I took a new hunter this past Saturday, and she's never been turkey hunting before, and we got on some gobblers late morning, and she shot one, and I instinctively jumped up and ran out there and grabbed it, and she was like, "Do I need to shoot it again? What is like?"
Yeah.
She was real nervous about it. She didn't know that was coming. But anyway, if you envision that, that's the same thing that's happened when we shoot these rocket nets. You know, you shoot the net over them, they're all flopping around under the net. You have to get out there really quickly, because, especially with gobblers, because they are lifting the net up, and they'll get away. We've had lots of birds get away, and you don't want to go through all that and have one get out. That's the last thing you want to happen.
We got him. No, we don't.
So, you know, usually we are not shooting unless there's at least 3. You know, just financially, it doesn't make sense for us to do all that work and everything without getting at least 3 out of it. And we have 2 researchers in there because we need somebody to go and anchor birds that are near, you know, the edge of the net. And what I mean is just basically we can turn them over in the net, and it kind of makes them feel like they're getting hugged, and they kind of calm down, and then we'll cover everybody's head. So we usually have 2 people. One is checking birds to make sure nobody can get away and covering heads, and the other one is, you know, wrapping up birds at the same time. So that works really well. And meanwhile, we have a chase truck nearby. They have to bring the truck in, and then we have all this gear because we need to get those birds out of the net, which, you know, a bunch of gobblers under a net with 1 1/4 spurs, that they get all tangled up in it. You know, they're flopping around in it. So once we get the chase truck there, then we are basically dedicating individuals to the individual birds. They're really carefully trying to remove them from the net. And then we have another person that's putting together one of the NWTF capture boxes, and we have to put the bird in that. And as soon as we get them in that box, you know, and the lights turn out, so to speak, when they get in that box, they calm down, and you know, then they're really good to go. So then in Florida, the big problem is temperature. We can't do that when it's warm, and what I mean by warm is it can't be over 70 degrees. And even with the gobblers, even in the mid 60s, we're worried about them. Like you'll start to see signs that they are heat stressed. Sometimes we even have to put them in the air conditioner. So, you know, it's a really stressful thing. We're trying to do everything we can to relieve stress on them. So once we get them to that point, we are then taking them one by one out of the boxes. If we have enough people there, we can run 2 birds at a time or 3. And essentially, we put them on the tailgate. We're putting a transmitter on their back. That's the most important thing. We do that first. We'll band them so that we can identify individuals from that band, and we go through a suite of measurements. We're looking at morphometrical things.
Morphometrical.
Yeah, so like the length of their bones and the width of their feet and all sorts of things like that. Their body weight we're measuring, beard length and spur length for gobblers and occasionally hens. You know, we're going through this whole thing. We're trying to get as much out of as possible. We usually we collect blood and fecal samples, and what we can do with that is, first of all, we can do genetic work with it. We can also screen the bird for pathogens that it might have. You know, there's a lot that comes from those samples that are really important, and things that we're concerned about with wild turkey populations. So
sounds like y'all got it down to you've got a playbook and y'all know how to execute it. Lanny, we're always in here. We always have these interesting guests, and you're always on your computer. What's up?
I'm looking at Onyx the whole time. I love the app, but I love the desktop too.
My favorite thing is Bobby doesn't know how to shut his computer down,
Yeah.
so I can go in there and share his pins to my account.
That's what you were doing in there this morning.
Yep.
Back during deer season, you know, I shot a couple of big bucks.
Of
But
course.
As I'm looking for them, I
Couple.
can turn on this tracking feature.
Yeah.
And I can see where I've looked.
And I use that feature too for spreading seeds, spreading fertilizer, spraying. It really keeps you on track.
Onyx is a great company. Look, we know Jared. They're hunters,
They
just
are.
like we are. So
Yes,
they're
no
serious
doubt
about
about it.
this. The way they've designed this thing, a hunter and a gamekeeper can take advantage of it and make their property better.
Use coupon code Mossy Oak to save 20% off of your Onyx subscription.
Yeah, and Mac, you shouldn't do that now. Richie, you got to help me. Okay.
Hey y'all, Jim Ronquist here with Drake Waterfowl and Old Tom Turkey Products, talking about some of the new lineup for this spring. One of the more popular is the SWT collection, or Spiderweb Technology. This is a highly breathable micro-vented stretch fabric for maximum silent mobility with a durable water repellent finish that'll keep you cool and keep you dry and keep you going in the spring woods. Be sure and check it out at a dealer near you or drakewaterfowl.com/Old Tom.
And it takes a little while because we're cycling through new people in terms of our technician base, especially. It takes a few captures to get through all of that because there's a lot of things in that protocol. But once everybody gets it, it's like a well-oiled machine.
I'm just thinking how much he even more respects and regards Mr. Fred Pringle and the pioneers of what they do. And how they were doing, like, or started what you're talking about in the early '60s. Like it wasn't rockets; it was like the cannon, big heavy things, and it was so kind of primitive, so to speak. And
pioneers, for sure.
Yeah, they were pioneers, heroes actually.
Yeah, when that came on the scene, it really changed the game.
Oh my gosh! And then, you're saying how
it had
much
to be the biggest
all
innovation.
those details of getting it right and how hard it is to do. Think about it.
Yeah.
What they had to learn, they had no experience at the beginning. So,
right.
What stood out for me, you bring up Mr. Fred Pringle, but I think he said he put his hands on, Toxie, you will remember, but close to 3,000 turkeys.
That's right.
And he only
said
lost
3,000 head of turkey.
And he only lost one.
That's right.
That he knew of. I thought that
but
was
it's a testament, though. He lived with them.
He literally
right
lived
there.
with
He was right.
He still lives with them.
He does. That's right.
Well, back in those days, they didn't have cameras and everything.
Yeah.
They were literally out there.
He said they would sit out there all day.
Yeah. Weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Get it just right.
In a box.
Yeah. Very different.
You got a question, Nate?
No. Appreciate you calling, but Dudley does. Dudley does. I was thinking about Fred Pringle. Sorry.
I want to learn more or learn about this long-term landscape scale habitat manipulation experiment you guys are working on.
That's a mouthful.
That's a big one.
So I'm just guessing here, like you burn in June, you may burn in July and see the difference, and tons of other things like that.
So there's actually several things building up to this. Like the Poult work, we need to know what good field management is, what is the best possible, and then we're going to implement it. And we have a very good handle. I have a postdoc, Liz, who has scoured the literature. I think she's gone through like 500-600 papers on turkey habitat-centric data sets. Mm-hmm. She's gone through everything, species-wide, all the subspecies and everything. All the way, I think she has papers all the way back to the 30s or something.
Wow.
So basically what she's done with that is she was trying to quantify what is best for every life stage, what are they selecting the most, and then what is the effect size that you get from it. And the reason we're doing that and the Poult work, we have other habitat work, where we're looking at nest site selection and all these different things because most of this has not been done with Osceolas. So we're doing all of this work to inform what does habitat manipulation need to be. How do we maximize turkey productivity in a landscape? And then let's go into that landscape where we've been tracking turkey populations and implement it and see what do we get out of that. Are we don't know how much to expect, right? I don't know if implementing habitat is going to increase populations by 10% or 2,000%, but that's a big difference, right? We need to have a pretty good handle on that. And also, could that habitat manipulation correct populations? So we're seeing declining populations in some areas. If we can achieve habitat manipulation at the landscape scale, would we see that correct those declining populations and make them incline? So that all that work's going into that. We have some sites selected. They're 10,000 acre areas, and we have been this year. We started tracking birds, and we're tracking all of these things we've been talking about: hen survival and gobbler survival, nest initiation rates and nesting success, poultering success, all of these things in these areas. And then 4 years in, when we've gotten plenty of data to know pretty well how those populations are operating, we're going to go into that 10,000 acre area and intensively manipulate habitat to try to improve quality across the board for all the different vital rates.
Okay.
And then we also have control areas where they're just going to continue as usual. So that's a before after control impact experimental design. It's basically the golden standard. And then we're going to continue to track those populations for another 4 or 5 years and basically monitor what did we get out of all that intensive habitat work. If we can achieve that, is it enough to correct populations?
I'm very impressed.
And you mentioned it earlier. I think one of the biggest threats is not being able to continue this study for long term.
Yeah.
Are you good for a couple years, or
Yeah, so
help us understand how we can help there, I guess.
Well, some of the, you guys are already helping a lot with the Gamekeeper grants. That is a critical cog in the wheel. But I also received donations. That's going into it. The state agency has committed to funding the long-term habitat project. Yeah, that's something to be said.
Yeah, yes, it is.
We usually have 2 or 3 year studies. Digesting a 10-year study plan, that's difficult for a state agency.
Yeah.
They're the person in that position very well might be committing someone else's budget to it because they may not be there that long, right? So that's really tough to commit to that long term. We're also working with NWTF and TFT to have different parts of that pie. There's several other funding sources that I'm seeking out, but it's hard to keep funding for that long.
And that's we want to go 10 years of this at a minimum.
It's a 9-year study total.
Yeah, it seems like somebody's got to step up and go count on this every year. The state or the federal government.
See, and we have a
university, someone, so that you have at least a baseline. You won't have it all, but you've got at least a nest egg to start from each year.
Yeah, and we have that piece of the pie from the state agency.
That's awesome.
But it's not enough to run the whole project.
Right.
So, and we have a commitment from some large land holdings to implement that at that level for a long term. That was also difficult to come up with.
I bet
where are you going to find 10,000 acres that they're going to let you do what you want to with it?
Really?
That's tough. So the funding is a challenge, and it's especially with this many projects. There's different levels of certainty for each one, and that's what I spend the majority of my time doing is trying to figure out how to keep everybody a paycheck.
Yeah.
How to keep
the team together.
Keep the team together.
How do we?
I've heard that before.
I don't know
where to hear that from.
Yeah, let me ask this. So Rob Kinney embedded with some of your researchers.
Embedded
Embedded with.
He's
them
like a war correspondent. That fits him like
he was
a
in the
glove
field.
right there.
That's right. He's got the mustache.
I came in, guys, and I was like, weren't there some mossy oak guys coming? And he just stood up out of the bushes. I was like, wow.
There you go.
You got to be careful.
The phoenix rises from the ashes.
He'll come up there if there's a waterway or something close by. He'll have like a straw sticking out of the water, sneaking up on you.
So I'd love to learn from Rob. Being around him and being involved in that, watching from a little bit from a distance through the camera lens, whatnot. Yeah. What was your takeaway from all this?
My first takeaway from it was these guys are pros and really love what they're doing, whether they're hunters or not. His whole team was really on it and was really enjoying the research that they're doing and understands it. But the excitement and anticipation that everybody has when like the nets are set, the charges are in and loaded. You've got the chase trucks over here. You've got a couple people scattered out in blinds. Was electric. It was fun. It felt like a 4 a.m. blast off in the public woods duck hunting. That's what it was. And so, we're up there. Hearing a gobble in December is also very cool. But we got a chance. Mark and I were in one of the blinds together. When he said there's 2 researchers, I found out that I was one of the researchers about 3 minutes before we hit the charge. We're there. Turkeys fly down. We see them fly down. They strut a little bit and they come up. And this is the video up here on the screen. But they come up and sat there, and literally Mark is about to say, he said, "Are you ready?" I was like, "Yeah, I got the camera right up." He goes, No. Are you ready? And so I was like, "Yeah, okay." And so we run out, and so charges are set, and that little remote control. It makes this whine. That whine, Marcus, right before the charges
Etched
go
into
off.
your mind, isn't it?
Oh. Anyway,
Into your
goes
soul.
off, charges whine, cannon goes off. Turkeys are caught, and we're just ripping out there. And both of us, I'm taking my shirt off, and we're putting it on turkeys and covering them up. And anyway, it's a very cool experience. It was, for me, it was a really neat connection between the hunting side and then the conservationist side, and then getting and their team being able to spend a lot of time in the field hunting. Even Marcus, I was hoping that you would touch on this too, about how you are kind of working on some hunter education programs within University of Florida, which I really admire and think is very cool.
I'm going to point out, and Rob just said it, so I'm going to twist it a little bit. He said the connection between the conservation side and the hunting side. And just remind everybody that without the conservation side, we start to lose the hunting side. And so it's not chicken or egg. Conservation comes first.
It's all in one thing.
100%.
Well, and I can add to that, we in the North American model of conservation was founded by and has been stood up by the hunting community.
Yeah.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
So,
It's unbelievable.
the funding, you guys had a real win from my point of view recently for turkeys in this state with the turkey stamp, right? You guys you're living it, you're giving back through the Gamekeeper grants and all these different things. Like the hunting community has been the source of funding for
since
forever.
it started,
and it's been the most successful model on the planet.
And nobody loves them like the hunters do. That's for sure.
So, we have a vested interest in perpetuating what we love, and people will go through great measures. I mean, when I go on a landowner's property, especially when they love turkeys, they will do anything on that land. They will go through extraordinary measures to change it, to make it as good as they can for that resource. And the majority of people otherwise, I don't know why they would do that.
We resemble that remark.
Yeah, and Rob commented on how you've taken a few students hunting and trying to get them in the game, and I mean that means a lot. We need those. Yeah. We need all these new students, or we want them to be hunters for sure.
Well, they need to be hunters because if they're biologists and they get into these programs and state agencies and those sorts of things and may find themselves as policymakers one day, it's really important that they're hunter biologists and not just biologists, and it's just a turkey to them. It needs to be more than that.
Yeah. Also the perspective is that every species, we love turkeys so much and we talk about them so much, and so much of our life is about that, and we love them. But all of these species, to survive long term, generations and centuries and all that, needs individual people that, what I was getting at, there's certain ones, Marcus and then his team and us, we are so focused on turkeys. So every major species we love needs a group and people focused on them, caring. The word that popped in my mind that will keep our game species healthy for generations and centuries is caring about them. I mean, whether they don't even hunt, his team cares so much about the bird. Of course, the hunters care so much. And I think in today's world, more and more and more hunters and even landowners are more worried about having a healthy population than just like, well, how many can I grow that I could shoot them, And that's a healthy thing. Yeah. But all critters need people specializing in that critter and caring for them. And that's, I think, part of the secret of the North American management plan being so successful is that hunters care so much, they're willing to do whatever and make whatever sacrifice or divvy up whatever money to take care of what we love to go hunt.
Yeah. You're saying everything needs a champion.
Yes. And I mean, everybody needs, every species needs the kind of love and care we're putting towards a wild turkey. And everybody, you can't do it all, but I'm just thinking how important when you care that much, you'll block and tackle anything that gets in the way, take care of, that species.
Yeah. So Marcus, when you're doing some of this blood work, are you noticing anything, any pathogens, anything that causes you a little concern?
Well, I can say there have been some surprises. With the one that you guys have probably heard a lot about is LPDV.
Yes, we have.
That one we have lower than I expected, so that was a positive thing. We're waiting. We still have multiple more years of data collected, before we'll be ready to make a determination. But so far, that was better. We had two pathogens. I'm not even going to try to say the name. Well, I'll try to say the name. It'll be funny. So leukocytozoan.
That sounds about right.
I think that sounds like it'd be bad.
So that's an insect transmitted.
zoan.
It's like a type of malaria or something.
Wow.
So there's a couple of insect borne, usually mosquitoes,
Like West
could
Nile
be-
type of stuff.
Yeah. So there's different vector borne
Yeah.
pathogens like that, and we had two, the leukocytozoan and hemaprotozoan, I think is the way you say the other one. Those two were much higher than I expected.
Huh.
But how many of y'all have been to South Florida?
Oh, there's a few mosquitoes.
There's a
down
few
there.
mosquitoes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
There's some biting gnats.
Yeah.
I was actually going
Few
to ask
ticks.
you.
I found a tick on a mosquito one time.
Wow.
That's a big mosquito. Yep. So that's what Daddy, when we were little, he said the mosquitoes. He said, you hear those mosquitoes, son? I said, what? Can you hear them? I said, well, I hear them buzzing. He said, no, they talking. They deciding whether they're going to eat us here or they're going to carry us across the river and eat us. But I was going to ask you, it came to mind, what if someone wants to, like, collect some tissue samples out of the bird they killed and send them off somewhere? I know there's stuff going on. We heard about it. They're doing it at Oklahoma State, I think. Mm-hmm. And can you just put something in the refrigerator and then how long would it last? Yeah,
it depends on what they're submitting the sample for.
Right. Okay.
So, like for example, you guys have seen the DNA project that's recently been launched. The samples that they get for that are different than what we're getting.
Right.
We have the hunting. I didn't mention this, but the hunting community in Florida has been extraordinarily passionate about this and helpful and behind us, and they've been really helpful.
I knew they would.
We have been collecting data. We basically, anybody that kills a turkey that contacts us, we will come and we'll field dress it for you.
Wow.
Which is a pretty good deal.
Yeah, especially if I call this 12-hour drive, that'd be
Yeah,
might spoil before you get here.
Well, we were doing it within Florida. We'd probably send somebody else up here. But yeah, we were just collecting the guts out of the turkey essentially, and we can screen for a whole bunch of different pathogens that way that are really hard to detect otherwise. So we've had, I don't know, we're over 100 that have already been contributed to the project from the hunting community, and then we were capturing birds all over the state, so we have another nearly 200 samples from those, not from the guts, just from blood. But we've got this really comprehensive data set now of all these different pathogens, and that in and of itself is a pretty special thing. Like, we normally just say it, we kind of just get some samples and it's like, okay, the prevalence of these things are this different thing. But we can actually now, as soon as we get these samples processed, we'll be able to see the distribution of prevalence throughout the state.
I was going to say that's going to be so important to get dispersed regionally.
Yeah.
And I mean, not every state necessarily, but that's going to change a lot between Florida to Mississippi, Alabama to Ohio to Canada to California. That's going to be, boy, we need to model that out all across in all these regions.
Yeah, that would be great. My vision is for that is once we get a spatial, at a resolution that we can really understand the spatial distribution of pathogens, then we can start to try to model what on the landscape, if anything, is driving, that being a high pathogen load in this area and low in this other one.
Right.
Like, what is going on that is explaining that distribution? And I think that could be really important because, we've really just don't know anything about that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been clearly it's one of those people ask what's happening. The only thing I can say, and I can't even do that with certainty, but I listen to people like you and say it's not one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's never like one thing.
Right.
And so it's complicated. That's why there's no easy answer to it either. But
Yeah.
you know, to definitively take the right action, you have to look at all those factors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously, I don't know, there's 5 or 6 things that affect this.
And it could vary
And any
regionally
one of them,
too.
Yeah, I mean, any one of them could be catastrophic by itself.
Yeah.
You know,
One the other thing that I think is important is we may have problems that are manifesting in this thing, right? Like we may have a habitat problem that manifests in a really high pathogen load.
right?
Or trying to piece together that puzzle is really difficult because what you're measuring isn't necessarily what the cause is. It's just correlated.
Never thought
with it.
about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
So it's really daunting. And another thing I think on the pathogen work I also mentioned, the genetic viability. This is something that we really need to explore more, and we have a really special opportunity in Florida to do it. And it actually is an important part of the funding that I have currently. We have the Florida Wildlife Corridor, which I think you guys had somebody on here to talk about, and I've mentioned it before. That's a pretty special initiative in the state of Florida, and it's essentially trying to protect land from the Everglades to Georgia and then across the Panhandle to Alabama. And they have about 18 million acres currently within that's not developed land that's connected, which is pretty incredible. That for just, to put that in context for you, do a little math, that's about the size of the state of South Carolina that's connected within Florida. And we have a bunch of work, including the genetic viability and the pathogen work, where we're trying to map out how important is habitat connectivity at that scale to the population levels that we're seeing and how viable they are in the long term. And that, I think, is going to be pretty remarkable work. We already have finished the initial analysis to look at the relative abundance of turkeys. And I can tell you, especially in the Osceola range, if there was no corridor, there would essentially not be turkeys. The development pressure and the alternative land use pressure is so great that corridor effort has essentially basically stabilized the populations in that environment.
I tell you, you just got to be impressed with the University of Florida, everything that y'all are doing. I guess I'm even impressed with your basketball team, truth be known. But
It's icing on the cake.
the state of Florida, the wildlife guys, there's a guy down there named George Worthen. I've talked to him from time to time. I'm real impressed with what he does and the way that they think about the hunters and their decision process. There's a lot of good things going on down there.
Yeah, it's been really great to be a part of it. My team is exceptional. I can't speak highly enough about it, but working with the state agencies and so many scientists in different places down there, it really has been a gift to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a quick rabbit hole, so we don't have to take long. But I got to ask you, and I've asked a couple. What do you see any influence on things from the avian flu outbreaks of the last couple of years? Like, one is, has anybody recorded a prevalence or whatever in wild turkeys, or is it more likely like I noticed the big thing we talked about, I think, was here, buzzards, like these buzzard roosts and seeing a bunch, but like maybe avian predators got it more because they fly around and contact more stuff. I don't know if that's had any effect at all. It just sounded so dire, especially waterfowl, but turkeys too. What's up with that?
Yeah, with waterfowl, especially because of how concentrated they are.
Yeah, and they move. They move so much in contact with.
Yeah, so they're they are a different. They're so different ecologically. It really predisposes them to problems like that. And we haven't seen any problems.
Yeah, what about? I was wondering about avian predators though, because they do move around and migrate, and they eat the flesh of birds and stuff too. I didn't know if maybe that had had something to do, just because it just seemed like, for whatever reason nobody can quite explain, we had geographically kind of in the southeast, and especially here, we had all of a sudden out of nowhere had a great hatch, and which is great news.
Yeah,
but it begs, like, is there a broader, like, climate, type question that went down,
Well, that is one thing that's really interesting. If you look at the productivity across state lines, it's correlated.
Yes.
Very clearly.
Yeah.
We have this huge space, this landscape where the population productivity based on our metrics that we have, like the Poult per hen data, they are correlated. They go up for a couple of years.
What happened again? Let's do it again,
I haven't heard about any data collected to suggest that have to do with the avian predator community. In fact, the only data that I'm aware of with that suggests that it's been stable, as far as I know.
Good to hear.
Well, they've been protected for so long.
Yeah.
I know some of the big ones have really jumped in their population in the last, 20, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that has some effect. But, for it all of a sudden going through all these headwinds and then seeing the success, I mean, the biggest complaint I've been hearing this spring, which is kind of a joke, honestly, the turkeys aren't gobbling because there's so many jakes shutting them up. I know that's going on from all around Mississippi and a good bit of Alabama, even over into this kind of northern Florida, where we have some hunting and people going in. And even honestly, we've been having terrible years in Texas, which is seems to be like used to go hunt in a zoo out there almost. And they've got jakes running over it. So something went down last year. I wish I knew what it was.
Yeah, I recently had a group of 12 jakes in Central Florida come in. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've seen a group that big during hunting. But I mean, that's the downside, I guess, of producing a lot of turkeys.
Lanny, do you remember?
I'll take it.
I'm with it, because some of those are going to turn into 2-year-olds.
That's exactly right. Yes.
And the 2-year-old sometimes is stupid enough.
I think I look at number 8 on here, and this is great. It's about to launch online comprehensive turkey management training. Can you tell us kind of where that's going to be and what that's going to be all about?
Yeah, so you guys know me, and I've been trying to produce as much content as possible online to help teach people different things to for the sake of the species. And been involved in podcasting and doing all sorts of things online to do that. And I launched a fire training a few years ago, and it was really successful.
Yeah.
And people loved it, and I was getting just constantly asked to produce something for turkeys, and that's what this will be. There've been several habitat specialists that I work with really closely that have contributed, and we tried to put together a complete, comprehensive training course that people can take, and it's really designed to help you make management decisions on your property.
Nice.
And what can you do to maximize productivity from all these different perspectives? We have all these, this habitat specialist that's what they do for a living. They've been doing it for decades in some cases. And, we tried to make that as comprehensive as possible. There is a fee for it. And
It'd have to be,
yeah, that is so that we can continue to host it, and we can continue to develop new content to put into it. As a nonprofit, it completely all goes right back into it.
That's great.
People, even if you just sign up and you don't want to take it, that's still helpful.
Yeah.
But the idea was, let's get as many people educated on how to manage their property to maximize turkey productivity as we can stand.
That's the answer.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you can take that on your own time anywhere you're at, as long as you have an internet connection.
Yeah.
So, I'm really excited about that. We're going to be launching that pretty quick.
Cool.
Here in
Is there
April.
a domain you can drop to us when you?
Yeah, we can provide you a link so that you can go directly to it and sign up.
All right. Sweet. Put that in the show notes, man.
Guys, I'm gonna look around the room. What have we learned?
Oh
here
my gosh,
today?
where do I don't have enough
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
We didn't even get into the fire.
It's been like this every time we've had him in here. We could talk all day.
Yeah, no, always.
Because I just think that, I just keep thinking of things I want to learn,
This path.
It's a complex issue. I mean, is really good. It comes down to me, and it's crazy that we hadn't invested in long-term research. It's been sort of kind of short-sighted. So it's exciting to hear that there's a almost a decade-long plan now to really get us some answers. So it's exciting.
You're also seeing the reason, like we have lots of scientists at the table now, and it's really important because I'm a habitat guy.
Yeah.
My long-term vision is going to be habitat-centric, whereas some of the other researchers are physiologists or biologists, or they have different focal areas, and we need to be comprehensive in addressing this.
Yeah.
And that's value that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, and I knew about this, but to hear him put it in perspective about this Florida corridor, how large it is, and how it's easy to understand how important it is.
Oh yeah, look at it on a map. You're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It's so comforting to know that there are people like you and Dr. Chamberlain and others that are searching for answers that everybody had, answers for the questions that we have. Just so glad that you guys are doing this.
Yeah.
And Lanny,
appreciate that.
knowing that he's got a 9-year project that he needs that to be able to continue. That it should wake us all up to help.
Yeah, we need to rally behind that.
And there's ways like this that we just released the Mossy Oak turkey stamp. The third one is out there now, and guys can go to it. All that money, Gamekeeper grants, we support research that Marcus and others are doing. It's a good way.
And it's much appreciated.
Hey, no problem. Proud to do it.
Yeah.
I think, Marcus, maybe this will take us in a tangent. I don't mean to, but I think one of the cool things about how Gamekeeper grants has come alongside some of the research that you're doing is it's helping also fund some other projects that are not specifically related to turkeys, only turkeys, right? Like it's some of the feathers and avian pathology. I didn't know if you could maybe touch on some of that and just the breadth of and comprehensiveness of the project.
Yeah, I mean, that has been a real that's an important point, because the Gamekeeper grants, some of these other sources, the private donations, they're restricted to research on things that are important for conservation, not necessarily specific on a species. And being able to tag coyotes, I have plans in the works, and hopefully it's going to happen to also get bobcats. We also have these sound recording units. We can get the entire community of birds, and we have people working on the entire bird community in response to the Florida Wildlife Corridor.
Wow.
So
you may rediscover the ivory-billed woodpecker.
Hey, we've got 2 detections. I got to go listen to it. I'm just kidding.
Bobby lit up. Right?
Bobby has been sending me ivory-billed woodpecker stuff in my DMs for the last month. So
he only sends me Bigfoot stuff. I mean, what is the deal?
He sent me
He's on
something
an ivory
about
bill
that.
kick.
Yeah, he's gonna catch Sasquatch and the ivory bill.
Pretty interesting.
All in one trip.
Maybe they're related. The Sasquatch
with
and the
what they're
ivory bill.
doing with they've got the direwolf. They brought it back. Maybe they can figure
here
out a
we
way to
go.
do a woodpecker.
Drama with the direwolf.
That's real.
We're gonna talk
drama.
about that sometime this week, aren't
Hey,
we?
you know what occurred to me today? Listen to him. I mean, we all this talk about Auburn and Florida and Dr. Chambers in Georgia, and it seems like there's a common thread on all the great ones. Seems like maybe the beginning of that is their alma mater, maybe.
Yeah,
Marcus?
Florida's.
We never mentioned the alma mater for him or Dr. Chamberlain or all of those guys. It's the same place, right over here in Starkville, Mississippi.
I think their athletic director,
Go Dogs.
That's right.
even got his start here.
He
That's
did.
right.
He
Yep,
did.
yep.
And
How about
others.
that?
So I just thought I'd point that out.
I'm-
Great
All
point of argument.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, just
That's
had
a
to
good
shout
one.
out
That's
to
a
the
great
dogs.
Yeah. Marcus, you see what I have to put up with.
I know.
You know, and I spent a bunch
It's
of
hard.
tuition over there, so
It's
I
hard.
like them too. So.
Yeah.
Well, guys, look, I think Toxin needs to run. But
I've got a date with my granddaughter, so I'm not going to break it.
No, you
better
don't
hustle
do
up.
that. Is that a hunting date?
No.
Okay. Well,
Just
whatever
as
date
important.
it is, you go enjoy it.
Something
We
social. Something
appreciate
social.
you being here. I think, why don't we take just a little bit? Well, we've got a trivia question we picked out.
You guys know I'm terrible at trivia.
Just, Marcus, this is, if there was ever a layup, this is a layup.
Don't
for
say
you.
that.
We
'cause
got
I have to-
redemption.
I don't retain that
Oh,
kind of
the-
information. I'm thinking about
Does he
turkeys.
not look comfortable over there, Lanny?
He does.
Looks
Maybe we
very
made
com-
that
it looks
couch
very
a little too
comfortable.
comfortable.
No, it's supposed to be.
Is this one multiple choice?
No,
I'm
it's
better at that.
I'm telling you, Marcus, this is a layup. I'm embarrassed that this one's so easy.
All right.
You're gonna make me look real bad.
All right. So the winners here are JJ Bing and Barry in the Ham.
All right.
Berry in the ham.
Yeah, how about that?
So they're good. If have they already won it, or if he gets it right?
No, they won it. They get a Nukem blind.
BARRY?
Oh, I don't.
Is that
They're
the
not
name
depending on me
Barry?
now.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
AARY.
Yep.
AA Ron. Okay.
Hey, Ron.
All right. So are you ready, Doc?
Yep.
All right. Was this
Damn.
hold on. Okay. What are the Osceola turkeys named for?
The Native Americans, right?
Which one?
The Osceola tribe.
What?
Oh,
What?
he didn't ring the bell yet.
Let's
He
back,
wants to.
Let's back up there. There was.
Ask that again.
You're kind of.
Yeah,
there,
Rob,
but-
that was.
What? Well, I accidentally read it like Jeopardy. I
thought
got all
so,
confused.
Yeah, that's right.
What are the Osceola turkeys named for?
Okay, that's better because that's not the question you asked before.
Wait, what
And
did
it
you
actually, it actually could be who.
Is this
I'm giving you a hint.
Is this a trick question?
No, it's not really.
Well, I thought that I answered it. So
I think you did.
Well, there was one specific guy,
Final answer?
Chief Osceola.
Yeah, Chief.
yeah.
Yeah, but it was the Seminole
Oh.
tribe.
It was not the
The
Seminole tribe. It was Chief Osceola.
All right, I'll let myself out.
So the
Yeah.
Yeah, because well.
So there
Chief
is no
Osceola was
Osceola-
actually a Creek Indian. It's interesting, and he assimilated with the Seminole.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I did know that.
we could we
But
should give you that. So.
I'm not good with this trivia, guys.
It's just so that there was a guy, and he's in your notes there, Rob, that honored Chief Osceola by naming that species.
And Osceola was not a Seminole; he was a Creek.
He originally was born a Creek Indian in Georgia.
So you've heard Seminole win?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
No.
came afterwards.
That came afterwards, but
It's
yeah.
quite a bit after.
y'all remember
and
the
he says Osceola cry.
y'all remember the old Ladina cultivar, Ladina clover there was one called Osceola.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Osceola Ladina. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, fun fact, I did diet trials with Osceola and Regal and multiple ones, and
Yeah.
the Osceola one was the most selected.
Oh, really?
That was the
Really?
first one I remember.
Where's Mac?
The first
Note
of
to
the
self.
Ladino clovers that I remember being talked about was,
Osceola.
and people were talking about how
I gotta
turkeys-
say,
turkeys
I
were
love
getting
that
into-
name. Whatever.
Yeah.
It is. Osceola.
Well, let's try it again.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
They
Marcus,
got the best subspecies. Thing.
what do we need to? What is there anything? There's a lot we didn't go into. We
Yeah.
probably don't have to do it. We could do a whole nother podcast with you. But is there anything we need to call out real quick?
Well, I just, thanks guys for having me. I really appreciate that, and the exposure is really helpful for us. And I can't say enough about my team, and they're all working around the clock, and they deserve credit for that. I could not do this without an army, and all of my collaborators and everything. It's just been a really special experience, and we're learning so much from it, and I'm so happy to be able to give back in this way. So I appreciate you guys giving me a chance to talk about it.
Well, look, and I got to just say this to everybody's out there listening, especially all our Mossy Oak families. Like, if you care and you want to do something, I mean, there's some great warriors out there, but none greater than him. Mm-hmm. And so whether we talked about something dear to your heart today or not, if you care and you want to help, Dr. Lashley's somewhere to look up, and you can get with us and we'll point you to him. But it just for us, it feels so good to know that you're working with people that are genuinely making a difference. Mm-hmm. And not this kind of, I got to say 15, 20 years ago, I almost felt like we had our finger in the wind trying to figure things out. And now we're getting somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I talked about caring. I mean, there's not anybody out there cares more. There's a bunch that care. I'm not saying he's the only one, but we appreciate it.
Yeah.
It sets an example.
Yes.
It sets an example for all of us
Yep.
to go by that hunt.
Yep. So Marcus, down there when you're in that university big ivory tower up there, do y'all like Tuesday nights come up? Do you hear people go, man, I got to get home so I can watch the Gamekeeper television show? Do you hear that a lot?
I'm sure he does. Yeah.
I've heard it before.
Probably only when Bobby's on. They want to see.
My parents got the channel now so that they can watch it.
All right.
How about that?
There you
That was
go.
one of
Did
the
they say
recent-
that's my son?
Look at
They
it.
did, yeah. That was what they got it for. They
That's
wanted
my
to be able to see
boy.
me. So.
How about that?
Oh, man.
Well, we certainly have enjoyed Dr. Marcus Lashley,
Yes.
University of Florida. What's your Instagram? Folks want to go follow you?
It's at Dr. Disturbance.
Dr. Disturb.
What a
and
that's
that-
a neat Instagram handle.
Remember,
Yeah,
you got that
that's
name. You got that
because-
name in college, though. Remember?
That comes with the habitat specialty. That directed disturbance is needed for that.
Yep.
No doubt.
All right. Well, look. So thank you so much. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you,
what
guys.
you're doing and your team. We make sure you did a great job calling out your team. That's awesome. Lanny, you got anything else?
I'm good.
Keep buying stamps.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.